Well, thank you. Welcome. Welcome to Growth Through Change, Lessons from Luxury. And I guess as you're all incredibly curious, somewhat prepared to change, but possibly I think you're under-indexing on waiting for the after party. So thank you for being here. I guess the other question is, how do I pivot from a theoretical physicist into luxury right now? I'm not quite sure, but I'm going to give it a go, so bear with me. First question is actually, what is luxury? I'm going to put that back onto you. Just think about that for a few seconds. What is luxury? What is luxury to you? What do you see as luxury? How would you define luxury? Well, we asked that question 6 years ago. And we asked that question because we were being asked that question by some of the world's most valuable luxury brands. You know, they were concerned actually about how diluted the term luxury has become. Almost rendered meaningless. Where does premium end? Where does luxury begin? Really, what do we mean by true luxury? And when we get serious about things, we tend to write books. And that book did a lot of research into everything from the origins of luxury, went back to ancient Greece, ancient Rome, the original patterns of consumption, all the way through Renaissance, Romanticism, to now modern day luxury and what we see as modern day luxury. But so this is what is interesting, right, in terms of when you think about what luxury means. Were these any words that were in your heads as I asked you that question? What is luxury? Just think about what's up here. Is it the exclusive? Is it about status? Is it about, we've got words like aristocratic, we've got affluence. Is it about demonstrations of wealth? Is it achievement, this notion of fulfillment? Or is it actually something a lot more intangible, this notion of time and what that means to us? Because what was challenging my brain constantly was actually, how can we fundamentally reconcile these two things? How can we reconcile these two creations, both under the aegis of the term luxury? One on the left-hand side, Armani t-shirt, widely distributed, made widely available, worldwide. On the other hand, a unique, one-of-a-kind creation. A creation marketed to connoisseurs, a one-off that bears the craftsman's signature. Polar opposites. So we do have a problem with luxury, we really do. And we talked to a number of people in the course of our research. These are just a few of the amazing individuals that we spoke to. And if you remember yesterday, when Ashish kindly gave me some time to talk a little bit during Best Indian Brands, luxury is not a category. Think about that for a second. Luxury is fundamentally a space of excellence that you just happen to be in. You know, you could be an automotive brand that is in a space of excellence. So we talked to Pagani, we talked to Renzo Piano, and we looked at architecture, we looked at destination brands and hospitality, jewelry, fragrance, sports, music. So luxury is not a category, it is simply a space of excellence. And what emerged from our research, and remember, the book came out 6 years ago, we were doing our research probably 7 to 8 years ago, but possibly some quite prescient answers emerge when you think about what luxury is now defined as. Luxury is time, luxury is space, luxury is silence. So we use the word exponential. What has changed fundamentally is the pace of our lives. We live in this cacophony and concatenation of experiences where we are less in control than ever. Are we in control of tech? No. So the ability to detox, to switch off. Luxury is time, luxury is wellness, luxury is well-being. Headspace, the idea of shared value, shared experiences become more powerful and poignant in our lives than ever. And so when we think about meta-luxury, and again, meta, we went back to the origins, meta being, you think about Aristotle and metaphysics, there's my physics connection. Beyond luxury, a true space of excellence that we define as a culture of excellence. And these tensions are really interesting. You know, so if conventional luxury is about passive convention, the way things have always been done, meta luxury is about authentic conviction, real conviction in who we are, what we stand for, and why we're doing it. Think about our millennial generation. What drives them? What inspires them? It's the whole notion of purpose, right? Another word that has possibly become very diluted today. But why should I join your business? Why should I work for you? Why should I do what you do? They're all questions that any 20-something coming into my business today is asking, and they need an answer to it. That's what's going to be the difference between keeping them there for 2 years and maybe 10 years. This tension between showing and knowing, how interesting was that when we think about the definitions of luxury? Is luxury about showing and being ostentatious, or actually is it more in terms of being in the know, insider knowledge? The fact that actually the luxury that you're wearing or you're driving or that you're buying is more understated, and you have to be in the know to interpret those codes. Stretch and surface versus focus and depth, this idea of absolute specialization. Think about so many modern startups. The question of new brands, emerging brands, startups came up a lot in the past 24 hours. But there is true value in terms of driving demand from the consumers in terms of focus and depth. So ostentation versus discovery and affording versus understanding. Again, is luxury costly? Is it expensive? Or actually is it valuable? Is it investment? When we think about understated, that word understated came up. Now, if you look at a brand like Aston Martin, stunning brand, Marek Reichman is their creative director. He talks about the understated beauty of Aston Martin. You think about the design, it has a timeless quality, this understated aesthetic. You know, that's playing into all these notions of meta luxury and a culture of excellence. So this really to give you a closing view in terms of what we resulted in our findings on meta luxury. Two things. So first of all, we separated out the space between brands that represent luxury and a space of excellence and everything that goes along with it. And second of all, we provided a business model that's now being taught in universities and adopted by a number of leading luxury brands. And it came down to four key drivers of demand: craft, focus, history, and rarity. And let's just go into those in a little bit more detail. When you think about craftsmanship, it's this notion of something created by an individual for an individual. That deep sense of knowledge, that unique specialization that you have in something, and the value of human judgment in the creation process. And we'll come back to the notion of being human, which has been a recurring theme throughout the past couple of days. Focus, the rock-solid conviction in what you believe in, why you do what you do, the value of that specialism to a connoisseur, or to a consumer. History, this notion of time is really fascinating in luxury. When you think about a lot of the legacy brands, there's this raging debate right now in terms of legacy brands and startups. And we're in the era of the startups. No, we're not. We're not. You know, the one thing a startup cannot replicate is time. David Acker this morning talked about story making and storytelling. You cannot take away 150 years, 250 years, 300 years of the archives of some of these luxury brands. They're incredible. They have storytelling at their fingertips, and they have been the epic story makers for generations and will continue to be. And finally, rarity pretty much speaks for itself. So what does this do? This really gives us some food for thought around the whole notion of what we value and why. And that has changed inexorably. It has changed inexorably. A number of other speakers have touched on this, and I thought this would be useful because we did a piece of research 4 or 5 years ago called The Age of You that looked at how modern brand building has evolved. And has it become more complex? Yes, because our world is completely more complex. Let's think about 2008, 2009, the crisis, when a lot of businesses were retrenching. What happened with Apple? They brought out the biggest innovation in our recent history. They changed the game, and they changed the world forever. That was a catalyst for things that will never be anything but different, right? So if you look about these ages, the age of identity, what was happening then? Brand, fundamentally trademark and ad campaign. Because the consumers didn't really have access to very much else. So messages to consumers back then, practically a monologue. It was a push mechanism. We then enter the age of value, which Interbrand actually had a lot to do with, because as Ashish said yesterday, we invented brand valuation. We put brand in the boardroom. And the minute brand gets in the boardroom, you have the ability to influence decisions as never before. So brand and business become inextricably interlinked. We then catapult into age of experience, age of you, yeah, age of me, age of you, every single one of us. Now, think back to the 1950s. We are at the center, we are at the crux of absolutely everything a brand does, and the shift has changed. No longer are we pushing messages to consumers. We need to listen, we need to understand them in ways as never before, and we need to be constantly on. The minute we take our eye off the consumers, where we're going, what is relevant to them, we are making or breaking our brand. What excites me more than anything, though, is where we're going. And I think this is quite powerful. I think we're entering an age of the deeply human. Because when you think about it, brand building is going to become more and less human than ever. We've all talked about it the past couple of days. Our worlds are becoming more automated by the second. You know, the robots are here. Artificial intelligence is here. We're living in the world of the virtual. Equally, I just remind us all that, you know what? The bookshop didn't die. I use that emblematically. The bookshop didn't die. You know why? Because human behavior takes a long time to catch up. There are things deeply, deeply rooted in our DNA and who we are that drive us. That's why luxury is such a leading example. The fact that actually we still crave luxury, whether we aspire it, desire it, whether it's premium or excellence, there is something in us that is very deeply human. And I think as we look to the world ahead and where we are right now, you know, I'm fascinated by the Renaissance. I'm fascinated by polymathic times and people where you saw art and tech, humanity and science colliding and coming together as never before. So you can look at our world now and you can say, we're about to go into one of the most dystopian moments in the history of time. And it's all dark, and it's negative, and it's fractured, and it's fragmented, and it's polarized. Or you can say, we have a responsibility in that. And there's a call to action to us all to be more deeply human. More deeply human in life, more deeply human in business. There's a fascinating quote by Gert Leonhardt, amazing futurist, who says, exponential technology demands exponential humanity. Yes, it does. And you know what? The luxury brands have been doing this for years. The luxury brands have been doing this for years because they understand, they invented the bespoke. They invented personalization. They know deeply the whole notion of understanding consumers. So, without further ado, and I've got 22 minutes already on the clock, so I'm halfway through. I am not going to keep you from your drinks, I promise you. Let's look at some lessons from the best global luxury brands. So, in October, I was in New York at the New York Stock Exchange launching this. So we've been doing this for the past 20 years. These are the top 100 most valuable brands in the world. What's most interesting, just take a look line by line. You cannot go past a single line without finding a brand in the space of luxury. Whether it's premium, whether it's luxury, whether it's excellence, as represented by a brand like Amidst. Look at the sheer influence of luxury on that study. And where is the best global Indian brand? Seriously, let's come back next year and talk about what that might be. And that really excites me. There are best global Chinese brands on that list. There are best global Korean brands. There are best global Japanese brands. Where is the best global Indian brand? So my quest today is to find a game changer who's going to put that next brand on the list. You know, we've seen it already yesterday, talking a little bit about the best Indian brands. You know, Tanishq, one of the top risers, greater investment in design, upping the ante in terms of the notion of what premium looks like within. So here's the reality. Best global brands, luxury was by far the top performing sector. Outperformed tech, outperformed retail, outperformed everything. Look at the number. Extraordinary. And to put it in context, we were talking yesterday, we track against the S&P, the MSCI. That's the hard reality. Strong brands outperform the market through recession and beyond. So let's look at some of the game changers. Most valuable luxury brand in the world is Vuitton. 23% increase in brand value last year. It grew by 23% of its brand value in a year. Vuitton is fascinating for a number of reasons. One, it's the only luxury brand in the top 20. And when you think about those 100 brands, they are across every sector. Second of all, it entered the top 20 in 2005 and has stayed there since the rise of Apple, Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, and it's still there. That's really extraordinary. So there's something really interesting going on with these brands. Chanel, new entrant. The only reason they're a new entrant is that, as you know and heard yesterday, we only value brands whose data is in the public domain. And Chanel released their financials last year, so hence Chanel is there. Hermes, we come on to talk about this brand. This is meta luxury in motion. When we talk about a culture of excellence, Hermes represents this, and there are some fascinating reasons why. It's the only brand, the only luxury brand, to have consistently shown double-digit increase in brand value year on year for the past 5+ years. When you think about a lot of brands, peaks and troughs, dependent on a number of variables, often leadership transitions, other business decisions, maybe IPOs. Top performing brand in luxury, Gucci, 30% increase. These are exponential numbers. We are now starting to get into exponential numbers, or close to it at least. 30% increase in brand value. And you contextualize that, just take a look. We've talked about Netflix today. 40+ increase in brand value in a year. Amazon, 50+. So for luxury brands, and again, remember, these are the top 10 growing brands from last year globally. There are 3 luxury brands in the top 10. That's phenomenal. And I've put together for you today a few lessons from the best global luxury brands. Culture centricity, we talked about this a lot yesterday, connecting culture on the inside to culture on the outside. Customer obsessed, absolutely obsessed about the customer, the center of everything. Subscription mindset, sustained focus, and finally story makers, which we'll come on to talk about. We've talked about this as one of the key drivers that we saw in meta luxury. Now, sustained focus talks about a number of things. When we think about the brand strength factors, again, remember these that we saw yesterday, these are one of the ways in which we conduct the analysis. This is like when you get into the engine room of the brand. The 4 at the top on the inside, the 6 at the bottom on the outside. That's like the end, it's us analysing, going into the engine room of these brands with forensic analysis. So sustained focus, think about what sustained focus, we talked about rock solid conviction in who you are, in what you stand for. Well, why is Vuitton one of the most valuable brands in the world? When we think about Vuitton, what do we think about? We think about the spirit of travel. We think about the journey. And we heard in the brand session this morning about the perils of throwing away your equity when you rebrand. This is a great example. Where did Vuitton start out as? What were their origins? They started out as a trunk maker. They made luggage. So all they've done is grown stronger and stronger from their original brand equity. And that notion of the journey, spirit of travel, is inherent in absolutely everything they do. Every communication, every touch point, it almost runs like a red thread through Vuitton and how you'd experience it. This is their IoT connected watch. Product innovation. Again, all linked into the notion of travel and the journey. Let's think about Chanel. Highly prescient. The world just lost a genius a couple of weeks ago. Absolute creative genius. But you think about that consistency of Chanel. When you thought about Chanel, what did you think about? It was the constancy. It was that continuity. Here was one individual carrying forward the legacy of the woman who founded the brand, carrying forward the legacy. So his constancy on the brand, this sense of permanence within change. Hermes. What do we think about with Hermes? It literally is the exemplar of craft. Absolute integrity in everything to do with the culture of excellence. And again, you think about what Hermes did not that long ago. They fought LVMH for control of their brand. So there's a sense of absolute integrity in everything that brand does and what they stand for. Now, Burberry's an interesting story. Burberry's an interesting story as somebody who didn't grow up in London, but I am a Brit. One of the few global British brands on the top 100. And they're an interesting case in point, because when I was a kid, this was a brand that you thought, that's not going to be around for very much longer. It was worn by people's very old-fashioned aunties and grandmothers, and it was not a sexy brand. It certainly wasn't bought by anyone under the age of probably 50, maybe. That's a bit of an extreme, right? But it wasn't in a good shape. The other way to look at it was a sleeping beauty brand ready to be woken up, and that's what happened under the era of Rosemarie, Angela Ahrendts, and Christopher Bailey. And what they did was regain relevance in that brand, and they positioned it as a brand to do with British heritage. Great product, amazing product, went back to the DNA of the brand, took back control of all the licenses, repositioned that brand for future relevance across future generations, became the pioneer in digital and luxury. They owned all of this. And so if you look at the curve, we've been valuing Burberry's brand since it entered our top 100, then dipped out again. But look at that curve. That was Angela Ahrendts and Christopher Bailey. And that was the two of them working together, the magic and logic of the two of them on that brand. There's a great quote that Angela said. When we published Meta Luxury, Angela asked us to come in and do a talk on it. And one of the things she said was, we never let a thing go out of Burberry unless it's been through the door of Christopher Bailey. So the exacting control that they took back on the craft. Look what's happened in the past few years. What was I saying earlier about leadership changes and transitions? The impact on your brand value starts quite quickly. So Burberry now is in a new chapter, a new era of growth under Marco Gobbetti and Riccardo Tisci. So, one to watch as the brand is retrenching, pivoting, and repositioning itself. People, talent, oh my goodness. Yes, yes, yes. And the luxury industry, if you look at what it's been doing over the past years, the focus has been so much on the consumers, so much on the influencers, that actually what I've been seeing with a number of the luxury brands that I work with, the focus is now as much, if not more, on briefs and engagements that we're working on around employees and brand culture. Harvard Business Review, never wrong, but right at this point, the competitive battle is not just customers' hearts, it's employees' hearts. Because not only do great brands begin from within, we have nothing. And the stronger your culture, the stronger your brand. Think about how much your employees, how much the people who you work with, are they ambassadors for your brand? Are they ambassadors for your business? Are they advocates for your brand? So this is something that Gucci has been excelling in. Let's remember, 30% increase in brand value. There's a whole host of things that they've been doing on the inside of the business. They developed a millennial committee. So the CEO talks regularly to these amazing individuals, listens to them, runs ideas past them. They're part of the ecosystem. There's a two-way conversation between the exec and these upcoming rising talent. Dior, brand that was always about a new vision, the empowerment of women, right? Great to see them investing in mentorship programs. Gucci Research Labs, they're looking into the future of work, collaborating, innovating with partners like Bocconi. Yes, if you do not have a purpose, if you cannot speak to the what, the why, and where you're going, and things that matter to all of us. Yes, the environment does matter to those 20-somethings. It really does. What is your social purpose? What do you commit to? What is your greater good? We heard about Patagonia this morning. Classic case in point. These guys, magic and logic, Zare and Michele, together, what they do together on the brand, and its effect has been incredible. Culture on the inside, culture on the outside. Vuitton investing in its people, investing in talent. The fact that they brought in Virgil, not only collaborating with, but head of menswear, phenomenal. That is phenomenal. Bold on talent. Hermes, this is how they talk about their employer brand. You will not see the word employee on there. What do they say? Characters. How wonderful is that? A brand that celebrates the individual. I adore Hermes. They are one of the most seriously playful brands. And look what they say, take things seriously without taking yourself too seriously. What better advert is that for anyone to come and want to work for that brand? Amazing. Okay, next point. Obsessive about our customers' world. Oh my gosh, yes. And the operative word is obsessive. We think about our customers day and night. Are they at the center of everything we do? We tracked in the top 100 best global brands the key brand strength factors that the top 20 growing brands over-indexed on, and they were relevance and responsiveness. Proof is in the pudding. I love this from Farfetch. Phenomenal. What this guy is doing at Farfetch is incredible, but I love something he said a while ago. If we're not solving a problem that the consumer has, we will not do it. Tech should always be at the service of us, of progress. Right? Seriously, again, where tech meets human. And I love this. I was asked by a journalist in an interview 2 weeks ago, is it now in luxury experience over product? And I said no. Again, the bookshop doesn't die, right? What we value. You look at, if that were the case, We'd have nothing in our homes, we'd have nothing in our offices, we'd be living vacuous, minimalist existences. We're not, right? We still value the tangible and the intangible. But what has changed is the relationship between the two. So certainly, there has been a shift in terms of what we seek to own and what we seek to access. Any cycling fans in the audience? Yes, quite a few. Okay, Rafa, interesting brand, also born in London. Premium cycling wear didn't really exist. This brand broke through the market. But they did it based on building a community of fans and followers. They don't talk about customers, they talk about fans and followers. I love that. Space as a service. You know, as we obsess about customers, we stop thinking about what we as brands need to create, and rather the worlds that our consumers, that people, we as humans want to inhabit. So Gucci Garden, think about the very name. Gucci Garden, it's an amazing space as a service. Blending museum, different spaces, community, restaurants. It's about bringing people together. And I love this. This is one of the Arnault family, one of the youngest running Remova. The notion of retail space, again, around community. Place where you can hang out and learn. Again, what we were saying about meta luxury, it's about knowledge. It's about discovery. This stat, what's one of the highest things on people's minds at the moment in terms of what they're looking to do this year? Collaborations, partnerships. It's also the biggest danger and watch out. It's the hardest thing to get right. But you get it right when you know who you are. This goes back to all these points related. The stronger focus you have, the better you know who you are. Vuitton can play with the best because it is the best. You know, the biggest mistake is to go into partnerships and collaboration with other people because you're in a weak position. It has to be about shared value. It has to be about shared value, as in any human relationship. Not what you can take from the other brand asset. What is the shared value for the two of you coming together? Subscription economy. Wow, seriously. Who isn't in the subscription economy business? Well, we all seriously need to be. Look at, again, the word exponential, overused, but not here. Exactly what's happening. Already, 30% of the entire value of that study is now attributable to subscription. And that's pretty much wrapped in 3 brands, seriously. Implications in luxury and fashion. What's been happening? Does a 20-year-old want to necessarily own an haute couture gown as her mother or grandmother did? Not necessarily. She still wants the Instagram moment with her friends. She doesn't need to buy it, she can access it. So what's shifting are levels of access. So again, that dynamic in terms of what we own and what we experience. Legacy brands and history. That's where I get quite passionate and animated when it comes to it's all about the startups. No, it's not. We mistake history if we think it's about looking back. It's not. History in luxury is about how you carry forward where you've been, who you stand for, what you stand for, who you are, and how you constantly remain relevant. This idea of making a mark. That idea of making a mark. How empowering is that to think that you've made a mark on the world? When we were interviewing people for our book, Meta Luxury, I talked to founders of businesses who were actually more concerned with advancing their category and the world that they were in than they were the brand per se. You talk to Fazioli, that's what they talk about in terms of pianos. And I love this. Traditions are not something we keep, rather something we continually create. Think about that. How would we keep that alive? This gentleman I've had the privilege to meet a number of times, phenomenal. In Japan, they afford the title of Living National Treasure to around about 100 people in honor of what they've given to their craft and what they will carry on with their craft. There's a reason why there's a Stradivarius on the front of my book. You know why? Stradivarius is a meta luxury brand. It's the culture of excellence, but it died. Nobody's making Stradivarius anymore. Why? Because they couldn't transfer the knowledge. That's why carrying forward history is so important. That's what luxury brands have been doing. When we think about icons, Amidst, you think about your businesses, you think about brands out there. Who has Veblen goods in your portfolio? They've created icons. Brands are about culture. That's why I got into this business in the first place. I'm fascinated by the relationship between brands and culture. You layer that up with luxury, you know, how we understand luxury brands is very different depending upon culture. That's why I'm here today. That's why I love being here in India. Look at Hermes. Look at that growth trajectory. No other luxury brand has a growth trajectory that looks like that. No other. That to me is a really, I'm not a mathematician at all, but that to me is a really beautiful thing. That is stunning. If your business looks like that, then kudos to all of you, seriously. And look what was interesting. Those years were the years it was fighting back the ownership from Hermes, it was fighting back the ownership from LVMH. And look what happened. Investment in a culture of excellence, a meta-luxury brand. And the points there, effectiveness over efficiency, integrity as a growth engine. This is a brand that does not make compromises. It takes exacting control over every aspect of what it does and how it does it. Value of time. Wow, well that's everything to do with luxury. Fast and slow. Because what do we crave now? What do your kids crave? What do the people who work for you crave? Now, next, new. You know, it's that classic shock of the new. That's all that's wanted, regardless of actually whether it means something a lot of the time. But what's interesting in luxury is that it is managing this tension between the pace of the world in which we operate right now, every single second, and something different. What excites me about what luxury brands have been doing, first of all, nobody can steal time for them. As we said, if you're a 200-year-old brand, you have 200 years of story and history and brand equity. You know, and either you lose that, you know, you're passive, or you do something about it, which is what these leading brands have shown us. There is value in something that is crafted by an individual for an individual. That's happening right here in India. That's why I'm excited to see where is the best global Indian brand coming from. There is value in what's worth the wait. Think about a Birkin and a Kelly, right? People are prepared to wait for these things. There is value in rarity. This was Burberry a few years back when they first realized, you know, do consumers, do people who come to fashion shows and then want to wait 6 months for the product to arrive in store? Possibly not. Let's drop that straight into retail. And the drop, you know, you've heard about the drop, right? Look at Supreme, what they've been doing with Vuitton. It's about managing levels of access. Think about the people in London. I know people in London, they paid people to get in a queue, to queue up for Supreme, right? Luxury brands are the story makers, yes. We talked about emotion in this morning's session. Nobody needs luxury, so why do we buy it? What does luxury represent? Let's go back to what luxury means to you, and it might be, sure, it means for many different things, but it's all about emotion. It's all about culture. Think about this brand. Think about how that's been going 20 years. You never own a Patek Philippe. You really look after it for the next generation. And there's something hidden in that, right? When we think about a society and a world and businesses that are throwing things away, creating things that we don't need, that's never going to be thrown away. It's built to last. So meta-luxury brands are possibly some of the most sustainable in the world. So, in closing, lessons for today. Iconic brands. We use the word iconic, another word woefully misused. But true iconic brands and iconic moves that brands make. And let's think, what Apple did in the economic crisis was an iconic move. Are about effectiveness, they're not about efficiency. And that's making hard decisions. That's giving up short-term uplifts for the sake of long-term brand protection and long-term brand value. That's how Hermès' growth curve looks like that. And it's fueled by the power of why and no. You know, we could get into a really interesting debate now. We've just heard the previous presentation about how we make decisions, what we think about, the value of why and no. How hard is it to say no? It's so easy to say yes to things that come along. Opportunities, collaborations, partnerships. It could be the one thing that kills your brand. Hermès asks why, and they say no a lot. They say no a lot. Think about the Apple Watch Hermès. How many times do you see Hermès collaborate with people? Do you see them use influencers? Do you see them advertise a lot? No. They do the exact opposite. Hermès, top, bottom is Ralph Lauren. I'm choosing Ralph Lauren indicatively. They happen to fall out. We've been valuing their brand over the past number of years in best global brands. They happen to fall out. But that shows you why and no. Ralph Lauren made itself over-available. The sub-brands actually became quite confusing in consumers' minds. over-articulated architecture. They were found in too many discount outlets. They're now, again, going through management change. They have been going through management changes, repositioning, retrenching their brand. So we'll see that starting to come back up. But that shows you the difference between the power of why and no right there. So to conclude, I offer you this, whether you're managing a premium brand, a luxury brand, a meta-luxury brand, it's a business model. It's taught in business schools, I continue to teach it, and it's used by a number of luxury brands. And how wonderful would it be? Whether it's in luxury, whether it's whatever space it is, it would be wonderful to see a global Indian brand. Otherworldly. I leave you with that word, because we don't need luxury, as we said, we don't need it. But there's something deeply human in us that means that luxury was the top performing sector, because we're all buying it in some shape or form. Whether it's premium, luxury, meta-luxury. And so some closing thoughts. How and where do consumers experience our brand? Are we surprising them? Are we constantly stretching and challenging how they experience our brand? Is it constantly relevant and fresh? Is our commitment to purposeful legacy? Again, what are we carrying forward? How are we making our mark? Think about platforms and partnerships. It is so easy to say yes, it's much harder to say no. Are you aligning those decisions with long-term brand building? And is our storytelling the stuff of myth? Final one. Fundamentally, it begins and ends here, brand value. You saw what happens in the peaks and troughs in terms of the decisions you make influencing the value of the brand. What excites me is that luxury brands have always been the North Stars. They've set the standard. But we're entering a new world now where the currency of knowledge and experience has higher traction than the ownership of the product itself. And that has a fundamental implication in terms of how we manage our brands. And it has fundamental implications in terms of every micro and macro brand touch point. How we manage rarity, how we manage levels of access to our brand. So, as we close, let's remember, luxury is not a category you decide to be in. Do not if you can launch a luxury brand overnight, all brands are born at some point in time, but it's how you sustain it that's crucial. And it's a natural consequence, when you get it right, of the pursuit of excellence. And so I thought it seemed apposite to close on the words of an amazing visionary, genius, and humanist in this world. And I'll leave those words there. Thank you so much.
Rebecca, I didn't think anybody would ever use a quote from Gandhi in conversation about luxury. If Gandhi was alive today, he'd be rolling in his khadi grave to be quoted as a luxury economy.
In a cultural sense, though, we've used that as a call to action.
We have dozens of questions for you.
Do you? Oh my goodness.
Prepare to take questions. Okay, Sean from Madison Media says that the challenges of marketing luxury brands to millennials, as we all know, as we think we know, millennials grew up on the internet, they're used to fast service, multiple companies competing for their business, shopping around, and yet want to be a VIP, don't want to wait, want everything now. And that seems to contrast with everything that a luxury brand stands for. So how do you sell luxury to the millennial generation?
So that's something that a brand like Vuitton has been doing incredibly well. They have obsessed about millennials in terms of their product, in terms of their collaborations with people like Supreme, as we talked about. So the notion of rarity, they've redefined the notion of rarity. Rarity now expressed as the form of a drop, the form of access, and managing different levels of access. But equally within Vuitton, there are different access points to luxury. What you might buy here versus the VIP component, and then connoisseurship and real rarity within that.
Next question comes from Harpreet Singh, who works in ESRI. I'll summarize this question. It's a long question. He says, for many Indians, a product that is expensive is automatically luxury. We equate luxury with price. And he says, for Indians, it doesn't matter where it comes from, what purpose it serves, what the backstory is. All it has to be is expensive. Should Indian marketers take that into consideration, saying expensive equals luxury and forget about everything else?
Oh, that's a great question. And that's something we've seen has been shifting. You look at what's shifted in China, for example. The big luxury brands who first came in, it was all about the expensive. It was exactly about that. And it was about the status symbols. We started to see that shift, as the luxuries become much more part of economies and much more entrenched. Actually, that the move towards the understated, so that shift from ostentation to understated is now happening. But that's a big question around things that are worth something, are valuable versus expensive.
So we don't do understated. I don't know if you know of the very low-key weddings that have been happening.
Very low-key. Very low-key.
Extremely cost-effective.
Lots of luxury.
Weddings. Nobody's flying in from anywhere to attend those weddings. We do ostentation. We don't do low-key. Which brings me to the next question from Amish Bal, who works for the Happiness Project. Sounds like a nice place to work.
That's a great place to work. I love that.
Is it fun, Amish, to work in the Happiness Project, or is that just a company name? Good? Does he look happy? He looks reasonably happy. He says, what is your view on the emerging luxury phenomenon of no logo? Muji, for instance, no logo. And how do brands respond to this idea that it's so exclusive that I don't need to tell you who I am?
So, well, that place, if you look actually, one of the brands on there, Amidst, actually is very understated. Always has been. That's why I also mentioned Aston Martin in terms of its design aesthetic as well. Quite understated, quite timeless. We look at this whole notion of brandless. You're seeing it in luxury already. There are brands emerging in luxury who are pivoting precisely on that, playing into, again, what we said earlier on, this notion of discovery, knowledge, understanding, being in the know. But it all comes down to the same principles of the craft, the specialization.
Our next question is from Kunal Mandal, who works in a company called Gyan Space. He says people want real more. You don't want artificially constructed celebrity. You don't want it to be endorsed by movie stars and sports stars, and you want it to be endorsed by real people. Is that true for luxury brands, that you want a sense of realism, or do you buy into the escapist myth of this celebrity lifestyle?
That's so interesting. If you look at Chanel, for example, their fashion shows are literally the stuff of myth and legend. So there's both, and you see both happening. So there's a bit of rebalancing in that in terms of, again, we don't need luxury, we aspire to it. So the fact that storytelling and story making is the stuff of myth and legend is absolutely in that space. At the same time, you look at Amidst, we said they practically don't advertise. They don't play with influencers. They really don't play with a lot of ambassadors. So that whole notion of the real and the understated is there in a lot of brands already.
So Rebecca, the next question: every brand you talked about has a 100-year-old history, a 200-year-old history, a Patek Philippe or a Hermes or any of them. So is there no way to do? So Prasenjit from EDK Fortune says, how does a startup brand position itself as a luxury brand? They're 2 months old, and how do they compete with somebody who's 200 years old? Or is it not possible?
Perfect. So some of the people that we interviewed in Meta Luxury were very young. So Fazioli is 30, Zai was about 15, Pagani is not very old. And let's look at modern luxury brands as well. Rafa, that's a young brand. I think that's only been around
How do they
10
take
or
on
15
the
years.
incumbents? How do they compete with the 100-year-old brands?
Well, first of all, it comes down to, are they using the same principles? Are they obsessing about the customer? First of all, do you understand who your customer is? That's the biggest thing. Is there a space in the market? Let's look, it's not a luxury brand, but it's premium, Warby Parker. That's a classic case in point in finding a gap in the market that was underserved in a different way, retooling and positioning itself as a modern luxury brand. So the thing that happens is that will happen quite quickly to you as a modern luxury brand as you're emerging. Don't forget your people along with it. Don't forget your people, because as you grow, make sure again your culture is so strong. You don't lose sight of your people on the inside as you're growing with your new customers.
A couple more examples of startup brands that have successfully competed in the luxury space, maybe?
So, in terms of the luxury space, modern luxury, well, Warby Parker is a very good one because it's out there. Away is another.
Parker, the pen company?
So do we know Warby Parker?
No, we don't know Warby Parker.
Okay. Warby Parker is eyewear, glasses. Google them. Apologies. Sorry for the.
Sorry, we don't Parker.
Warby Parker eyewear, exactly. Another one when we talk about modern luxury is the brand Away. So we look at we talked about Remova earlier on. Luxury luggage. Away is a modern luxury startup, again, that's positioned in a similar way to Warby Parker has in eyewear.
And the question that I like the most comes from Rohit Ranjan, who works in Del Monte. Del Monte is a food processing company. I think it's the best question ever that everybody in this room.
Oh, wow.
He says, can I, as a human resource, as a human being, ever be considered a luxury brand?
Oh, that's a great question, isn't it? Well, let me take one step back, because I was doing a talk at the University of Warwick on Saturday about personal branding, and we have actually valued brands as people. So we valued LeBron James, the sports star. We valued artists, And you could argue, we value the artist Modigliani, you could argue that actually that's a space of art is a space of excellence. So
but
I
he's
think, but he was, and indeed you could be a brand in your lifetime. Who knows what you might represent?
How should he go about doing that? A quick cheat guide for him to become a luxury brand in his company?
There's no quick cheat guide, but I'll happily talk to you over drinks.
Huh?
How about that?
Right, that's an offer you should take her up on. Right. One of the things you spoke about, this question comes from Rohan. You said luxury is time. And one of the promises that Uber makes is that we'll save you time. You don't need to wait for a car or an auto or whatever. Would you therefore then consider Uber to be a luxury brand, even though it's a mass brand and available fairly economically?
No, but what they're tapping into is the whole notion of time has become a luxury in our lives. Right?
They've taken a leaf out of the luxury playbook, you'd say?
Taken a leaf out of the luxury playbook, luxury mindset.
Here's a question for very rich people will be worried about. Does luxury cease to be luxury for those who can regularly afford it? If I can afford luxury experiences every day,
so if you're ultra high net worth.
What's called the hedonic treadmill. If I can afford everything in the world, a St. Moritz holiday or a Patek Philippe, does it just become another watch and another car?
Beautiful question. No, it doesn't, because I think what happens is, let's remember the principles of meta luxury. You know, luxury is about knowledge and understanding. So actually what they crave is to learn more, to go deeper. What are the elite communities that they can be part of? You know, how does one of a kind and something crafted by an individual for an individual, unique access to people and conversations. So what you're finding around brands is they're shifting out more into the experiential, in terms of communities. So that's what we're seeing in terms of ultra high net worth. We see that a lot.
All right. Rebecca, would you talk a little bit about luxury brand failures and what we can learn from them? I imagine Virtu Phones positioned itself as a luxury phone maker and that didn't really work. They positioned themselves, they were a newer emergent luxury brand, but I'm guessing that they didn't deliver enough value with the phone. Tell us a little bit about failures in luxury brands and what marketers can learn from that.
And I remember very well the story of Virtu, and what hit was the Apple iPhone.
It did, and far from a luxury brand.
But although I would argue that they took a leaf out of the luxury playbook, because they positioned that brand, look at it, it's designed beautifully. You know, they were the people who changed the game in terms of what tech looked like. They humanized it. It was premium, and they charge a premium for it, and they continue to do so. Another one I would compare and contrast, Burberry and the brand Aquascutum. Does that mean anything here?
Sorry,
do we remember Aquascutum?
Aquascutum, no.
I'll mention it because do you know what? If you Google Aquascutum, Burberry and rainwear brands, luxury rainwear, they were founded within a year of each other. Aquascutum is no longer here. It's gone into various periods of ownership, but it's nothing like the brand it ever was. It's almost disappeared. And that just goes to show what happened with Burberry. He was almost actually on its last legs, and the rebirthing of a sleeping beauty brand. So.
And why did that fail? Why did Aquascutum fail?
Because they didn't do everything that Angela Ahrendts and Christopher Bailey did, as we heard about with the Burberry success story.
All right. The next question is for me. Various statistics have shown us between 12 and 15% of the people in the world capture 60% of the GDP every year, the so-called 1%. And I think in India, it's 16 families that control 60% of the GDP. In the US, the 6 richest people, men and women, make more money in the first 3 days of the year than the rest of the country make 365 days. Are you going to see a lot of anger against the 1%? And is that anger going to translate into anger at these luxury brands that are catering to the 1%? How should brands cope with that?
So I think, first of all, we're seeing a lot of shifts in luxury and what that means. Again, that's where the understated starts to come into more play. But to your point about the ultra high net worth, we're also seeing a greater sense of legacy and responsibility. What do I do with my wealth and how do I give back? Also, how do luxury brands become more purposeful? You're seeing a greater sense of purpose and a role and sense of their role and responsibility in the wider world in luxury brands. So when I talk about luxury and culture, that's why I believe they're so synonymous, and we will see much more of that, and we must see much more of that.
I noticed in your presentation you didn't pick a single Indian luxury brand. Were you to pick an Indian luxury brand, what would be top of mind for you? What category or what brand?
For me, I think it has to be, you know, India's always excelled in craft and craftsmanship. Mm-hmm. So I guess I'd more turn it into a call to action. I would be happy in a couple of years' time if there were a best global Indian brand on that list, whatever category it were in. How wonderful would that be?
All right. Those are the questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And you can catch Rebecca over drinks and imagining if you have questions on how to turn yourself into a luxury.
Thank you so much.